This PoetryPower video focuses on the poem Tissue. I want you to start by feeling and connecting to the ideas in the poem. So, two key questions for you. For some people, when they look in the mirror, they can see other members of their family. They can see their parents, brothers and sisters, long lost aunties in their nose, their eyes, the shape of their face. But that's not all that family is. For some people, family is more about who they are and the way that they behave, which has been shaped by the people they've grown up around. So, second question, if you could look at your soul, if you could take it out of your body and look at it, who else from your family or community has played a part in making you who you are, and how does that feed into the person you've become? Once you're done with that, we're going to dive straight into the poem with a reading, and then we'll talk about how those two ideas connect. Tissue by Imtiaz Darker. Paper that lets the light shine through. This is what could alter things. Paper thinned by age or touching, the kind you find in well-used books, the back of the Quran where a hand has written in the names and histories, who was born to whom, the height and weight, who died where and how, on which sepia date pages smoothed and stroked and turned transparent with attention. If buildings were paper, I might easily feel their drift, see how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. Maps, too. The sun shines through their borderlines, the marks that rivers make, roads, rail tracks, mountain folds. Fine slips from grocery shops that say how much was sold and what was paid by credit card might fly our lives like paper kites. An architect could use all this. Place layer over layer, luminous script over numbers over line, and never wish to build again with brick or block, but let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths, through the shapes that pride can make. Find a way to trace a grand design with living tissue. Raise a structure never meant to last, of paper, smoothed and stroked and thinned to be transparent, turned into your skin. We're going to do three things over the course of this video. We're going to do the basic. What happens? What is it that the poet wants us to feel in this poem? Then, how does the poet use language to present their message? And finally, why have they shaped the poem this way? This is a poem about history and family history and how we keep records of it. It references the idea of the Quran, and in many villages, once upon a time, it would have been the biggest, most expensive book that anybody owned. And so the history of the village was written in the back, almost like a civic record of who was born, when, family lineages, that kind of thing. So that sense of paper as a record is really important in this poem. Also, the idea that paper is kind of where our big ideas start. Architects are referenced in the poem, buildings, the idea of grand designs is referenced in the poem. This sense of building and creating is quite important. Then the poem moves into a more metaphorical sense, the idea that people aren't just what you see, we're not just the physical, but there's a kind of design and pattern to us, that our family lives and our histories are part of that, but also the idea that our ideas, the stuff we write down, the stuff we leave behind when we pass on, is also quite significant and important. So, this is a poem about knowledge and identity. Paper in this poem is a metaphor for human knowledge and the way it's passed on. In the poem, Imtiaz Darker refers to religious books, but also to the many ordinary ways that paper shapes our lives. She mentions receipts and credit card slips and things like that. The poem is full of references to light and change. It implies that human beings have control over the way that society grows and develops. We're going to look at two things when we get to exploding quotations: the idea that paper is presented as powerful, and the idea that memory and history and identity is a positive thing that helps you to survive. For those of you looking to dig into the why, there's a big sense of fragility in the poem. There are many references to thin and transparent, and even the word tissue, reminding us of tissue paper and thinness, suggests it's easy to break human society. You could link that back to the fact that Imtiaz Darker grew up in areas where war was not unusual, and therefore she's more aware that normal ways of living are vulnerable. The poem is an exploration of the way that humanity must internalise the lessons and knowledge that we have. So if I write down something on a lesson plan and then I hand you the lesson plan, that doesn't teach you something. It's just a piece of paper. You have to kind of take that learning inside yourself and learn it in order for it to pass on and to be something more than just paper. 3 quotation explosions now, short and sharp. What you should do is you should spend about 3 minutes on each one, jotting down your notes, then unpause the video and go on to the next one. I'll give you some ideas after each one, so if you pause once you've heard me read the quotation and the ideas, you'll have time to write them and then you can compare your ideas to mine. Here we go. Our first key quotation. Paper that lets the light shine through. This is what could alter things. Here I think you should be looking at the verbs, shine and alter. You should be looking at the nouns, light and paper. You should be looking at the metaphor of the light in this poem. We've talked about light in literary terms before and what it often symbolises. And to decide whether this is a positive quotation, and if so, why. So, you've had a little think. Let's see what ideas we've got that you can match up with. Here, I think you ought to have a look at the verb shine to start with. This sense that paper brings brightness and understanding and ideas, that the light is a symbol for knowledge here. Then you want to look at the verb alter. This idea of changing the world is quite important in this poem, and I think you would need to be looking at that as a positive metaphor, the idea of changing through learning. In our second quotation, we're looking at the last line of the poem. Find a way to trace a grand design with living tissue. And here I would be looking at the idea of the verbs and the nouns again, but this time also the metaphor of the grand design. And again, if this is positive, in what way is it positive? So you've had a little chance to think. Let's compare some ideas. Here we're needing to look at the grand design idea first, I think. The idea that there has to be a plan for human beings, whether that's religious, whether that's the idea that as a society we get better and we learn. Whatever it is, there's a sense that there's something bigger than just us individually here. Then you're looking at the verb trace, the idea of there's a bigger pattern, and if you've done this in primary school you'll remember putting tracing paper over it and kind of drawing a pattern that already existed. That kind of passing down of information is important here. Third and last quotation. Paper smoothed and stroked and thinned to be transparent, turned into your skin. Here you need to look at the obvious metaphor of paper turning into skin. Why is that there? The volta and the change in the middle. What's going on there? What's changing and what's it changing into and why? And why are those two ideas put together? This is about knowledge and the stuff that we learn, the books that we use, kind of turning into something more permanent, more important, more significant to us. So we take it in and it becomes part of us. That here is in the metaphor of the paper turning into skin. So you've got that change in the middle from knowledge to something that is permanent, part of us. Now what you need to do, as always, is to practice turning your ideas into paragraphs. The straightforward sentence stems are here. What you should do is you should take about 5 minutes per quotation, create yourself a paragraph using those sentence stems and changing them so they fit your ideas. And once you've done that, send it to someone to have a look at. Remember, if you need someone to go through the quotations in more depth, if you head over to our Poetry Burst playlist on the YouTube channel, you will be able to find this poem done in more depth there to support your background knowledge. Best of luck, away you go.